In this episode, Picard, Season 3, Episode 9, VOX. Well, Megan, Episode 9, VOX. Did this rock and roll or what?
Oh, I knew he was a Borg. Oh, it was satisfying.
So, yeah, you called it. Kudos. And it makes complete sense.
Mhm.
But I guess I don't want to say it was the backstory, but how they put it all together to get Jack to that point was, I just thought, brilliant, and some great science fiction writing.
Yeah.
So they had to get Picard's original human body to get. It was not clear to me if they took the organ or they just harvested his post Borg inserted DNA. But they got that, and they were able to create enough material so they could put it in the transporters to change the crew. And then, of course, Vedic, I think she discovered that as she was escaping Daystrom Station. Did I get that right?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, the whole relationship between the Borg and the Changelings, I think, is really fascinating, and it really brought up some big questions for me about like what is being really said here about collectivist versus independence, right? The big bad guys, the have all these great goals, but I don't know. It feels American in terms of everything that is. It's communist, basically. Absolutely terrible, absolutely the worst, even if it's being approached with these really, really great intentions. And then you've got whatever the Federation is right now as the obvious alternative. I thought it was philosophically very good to chew on.
I took it in a completely different direction. I
Mhm.
thought it was two defeated enemies defeated by a biological weapon, basically genocide against both the Borg and the Changelings,
Mhm.
who recognized singularly or apart, basically, they weren't going to be strong enough to attack and defeat the Federation, and so decimated that they didn't care what they had to do to destroy the Federation. And so
Yeah, fair
that's
reading.
where I saw that
Yeah,
from.
I think that makes a lot more sense for like in world. I'm thinking
Uh,
more commentary on the world.
uh, I, let me ask you this. I
Mhm.
was a little put off when the Borg Queen reappeared because it wasn't Girardi. And that was such a part of season 2. But I had to then step back and say, well, that's a different timeline. And we've got multiple timelines going now. Um,
Yeah.
but it after having had that great ending of season 2, where I thought that there possibly could be, if not a rapprochement, at least a non-proliferation pact, and we won't kill each other. I don't know if the Borg would ever be admitted to the Federation into that timeline or not, but I thought that was such a hopeful ending for season 2. So I was a
Yeah.
little disappointed to see the bad Borg Queen reappear.
Yeah, no, it's a good point that it's different timelines. I always find completely different timelines or multiverses a little hard to keep track of. But it just my failing there. But I agree. It was such a hopeful ending, and I would have loved more exploration of the more hopeful, positive Borg, which almost seemed like. Well, we'll talk about kind of the potential new direction of main timeline Borg when we talk about the finale. But what I wanted to kind of get your take on a little bit was how do you think it must have felt for especially Counselor Troy Deanna to see a Borg cube behind that door? Because that was quite a scene, and professionally, it just very very poorly done by Deanna. But emotionally, I'm sure there's some good reasons for it.
I tried when I saw that and rewatched it, I tried to think of a single episode of TNG where she was that terrified, and I couldn't think of one.
Mhm.
There were certainly scenes she saw during TNG that disturbed her, and but that took it to a level of terror that made me wonder, did the Borg do something to her planet?
Yeah.
I just thought it was a level of terror I had never seen in her. And then the corollary to this discussion, which I hadn't realized, was she's not a telepath, she's an empath.
Mhm.
And certain betazoids are telepaths, but she's not one of them. So she can't communicate, although I thought she communicated with her mother non-verbally. So maybe that was my confusion.
I'm sure there are family things
Okay.
because, yeah, there's gotta be family exceptions.
But the terror she saw, I was beyond anything I could recall from
Mhm.
TNG. How about you?
Yeah, I was mainly, quite affronted that she left Jack alone after that revelation, didn't even discuss it, didn't disclose it, just ran off to tell other people. I mean, I'm not a counselor or therapist of any kind myself, but I'm pretty sure that's a no-no.
Are you calling it patient confidentiality?
Well, there's the patient confidentiality, and then just like, basic empathy. You've just discovered something about this person who's terrified, and you're just like, sorry, nope, can't. Running out,
Gotta
like,
go.
yeah, I thought it was not Deanna's best moment. I was not super impressed by that. So
I have to agree with that. Yeah.
yeah.
But I just, it made me think there's something going on here about her level of terror with the Borg that I don't
Mhm.
understand or that I
Yeah,
don't recall.
that's I think a very generous reading of it because otherwise that was a pretty rough thing to do to a kid.
So it's not exactly a cameo appearance, but I have to say my favorite non-star appearance in this episode was Admiral Shelby.
I had that
I
noted
thought
down.
that
Yeah.
was so cool. I even told my wife, "Look, it's Shelby."
I
And
love
she's
the
like,
way they've been doing that throughout this whole series. Just like, oh yeah, that person who you saw in a couple of episodes or who was a minor character. They have continued to exist in the universe and they're still doing things. Oh, it's so great.
and she's Fleet Admiral Shelby.
Mhm.
So she got exactly what she wanted. She wanted the captain's chair way back when in the best of both worlds, and she got it. So I thought that was so cool. And what about your buddy Shaw?
Let's see, what have I got down here about Shaw for this one? Oh yeah. Oh God. It happened in this episode.
I thought of you the whole scene. What's Megan gonna do?
I was just so sad. I think his death reminded me a lot of Vedek's death, actually. So when I mean it was my heart that he handed it over to Seven, that he called her by her proper name. Those were wonderful things. But just the full circle that had happened for him. He gets all of this trauma, this PTSD, this big chip on his shoulder from having survived Wolf 359, only to ultimately be murdered by Picard's son. It just it was less of a noble death. It just there was no glory here, just like with Vedic. There was no real success. It didn't end up meaning anything. Just a brutal, wasteful death. It made me really sad.
I had I had thought before that happened that he was going to lead the next series. And it was going to be he is
I
captain
thought we were gonna
and
get more of him too, and they
Seven of
just
Nine as first officer. Obviously, that's not going to happen now. And I thought he became one of the most interesting characters in this
right?
series to me because of what you said. His full journey, the whole Wolf 359, the survivor's guilt that he felt. Um,
Yeah.
it wasn't that he had seen his crewmates and colleagues murdered. It was the survivor's guilt, literally.
Mhm.
Why am I thrown on this life raft?
Oh, yeah, it
And
it plagued him his whole life, and then he was killed by the thing he blamed, fairly
right.
or not, and just ugh. Yeah,
But you're absolutely right, though, at the end when he called her Seven of Nine.
that was a good moment.
Yes.
That was a pretty
And
good
I
moment.
thought of you again. And it really showed his, at the last moment, he recognized his mistake
Yeah.
and tried to actually reach out to her in a very human way
Mhm.
by calling her Borg name.
Yeah.
And I just thought the not contradiction, but the juxtaposition of that was just brilliant.
Yeah, I think the next iterations, whatever comes after this, and I think you said at some point, I can't remember if we were recording or not, we've got Star Trek for the rest of our lives now. Yeah, I think you're entirely correct. But I think it will be lesser because Shaw will not be in it.
I agree. I agree. And you rarely get to see, I think, a full story arc of a character in terms of personal growth.
Mm,
And that's what I saw here. Sometimes you see it in one episode and you think, no, just not enough. But here we saw it over 9 episodes because he doesn't make it to 10.
yeah.
But uh, that whole scene, I thought, well, God, what is Megan going to think? And I know she's going to be upset.
It was not easy watching. It was not easy watching. Well, let's talk a little bit about the Borg taking over everyone under the age of 25 in Starfleet.
Well, first of all, I didn't realize that that was a thing. But then I thought about it, and other than the Queen, there are no old Borgs, uh,
Yeah.
no old drones. Um, so pretty ingenious. Also, in my mind, as terrifying a nightmare as any parent can have.
Right? Yeah, I'm not a parent, but I kept thinking along those lines. Yeah, could there be anything more terrifying? I've got down as like, okay, it's very Children of the Corn. We've got, do you know, have you watched Torchwood?
Yes.
Yeah, Children of Earth, we are coming, we are coming. Just, oh, yeah. So I think they were really calling out to some other quite wonderful franchises there, but
Oh,
it also
man,
brought up the question of
Torchwood, deep tracks. Wow, I'm impressed.
but when all of the kids on the bridge, when they started saying this, we are coming, I was like, that is a direct call out. That is 100% Children of Earth.
Right.
But
Um,
why were all these babies on the bridge? What kind of education system do they have that you have
I don't
tiny
know.
infant children running spaceships?
Um, that's a really good question. I really hadn't thought about that in terms of, junior officers. You have to assume to get into the academy, you literally have to be like a Girardi, the absolute best of the best. And
Yeah, because
I
I mean,
guess
it's
that's
it's 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 like Frontier Day.
right.
Why isn't it like the more senior officers who are in place of honor on the bridges? Why is it all of these? I mean, okay, no, wait, changeling infiltration. Never mind, I answered my own question. Because Starfleet
so
was run by changelings.
so what other questions came up for you?
Let's see a little bit about, uh, uh, yeah, kind of more on Jack. I think this was really interesting, especially right after he realized what he was, started to do this internal questioning of, am I going to stay here? Am I going to join the Borg? What's going on? Deanna mentioned specific protocols about what has to be done. And I was really curious about what are these protocols? To what do they refer? What situations were they planning for in terms of a danger to Starfleet like this? And yeah, what did you think about that?
So that actually is the answer to the question of or the response of why she left like she did, I
That's
thought.
probably true, isn't it? Yeah, because she knew what was going to have to be done.
Yes. And what was going to have to be done was either sterilization, sort of some sort of containerization,
Yeah, that
some
Vulcan Academy, right?
right, something, whether you call it a re-education camp or whatever it is. And whatever it was going to be, conceivably could have been medical experiments on Daystrom Station.
Mhm.
But you're absolutely right. There were protocols in place. They were severe because they had to be severe because 25 years, whenever it was, we last time we saw the Borg at Wolf 359, um, they were the superior being
Yeah.
and humans weren't, and they could manipulate humans in a way we had no defenses against. You would have thought we might have evolved, but maybe not, because I saw just absolute horror and terror in her voice. And now that I say all that, I remember thinking it was whatever these protocols are, they are very, very dark.
Mhm. And I thought that the other thing that I thought was interesting was Jack, like everyone else who was kind of age to be assimilated, had lived almost entirely in a post-Borg world. You know, they were all born, they all grew up, they were all educated after the threat had been eliminated, as far as everyone knew. And I think that
That's
really
a
went a
great
long way
point.
to explaining his arrogance, to being like, no, I can handle this. I don't need
Right.
protocols. I'm going to be fine. They have no idea whatsoever what they were actually going to be up against. I wrote down here, one frat boy against the Borg queen. Yeah, right.
And actually, that scene gave me more insight to what happened to Picard on the Best of Both
Mhm.
Worlds, because he tried to tell Jack, you can't fight her; she's too powerful,
Mhm.
and he is an enhanced human.
Yeah.
To draw from perhaps another series we've talked about, he is enhanced. Yet even he was not able to fully defend himself from, I don't want to say her charms, but
Mhm.
certainly her mind powers. And even in her depleted condition, uh, she was still a much more powerful being than humans were
Oh, yeah.
or are.
Yeah.
So,
Ugh. Okay, so the last, I think, maybe point for this time, and this one I think is all on you. How did it feel to see the Enterprise?
great, great! It was so cool to see that. I was just in awe,
Mm,
and I felt so good inside. Um, I think we've touched on this earlier in one of our prior podcasts, but in terms of TNG and that crew, we didn't have a movie or ending of the television series in a way that was very satisfactory
mhm,
because of the way the series ended. I think I've heard Deanna Troy in an interview say we went off the set from Star Trek: The Next Generation and went to the movie set the next week.
Oh,
And so
wow. Yeah.
literally they kept working and they never got a final farewell movie like the TOS crew
Mhm.
got. And so I was hoping that this series would be that final farewell, and spoiler alert, it is, but it starts with that seeing the bridge. And I've read all the interviews from these construction crew guys
Mhm.
who came back to work on it. And, they just loved it. And the way they honored all of that and in some way honored us as the viewer, as the fan.
It brought me
Uh,
right back, just the way those lights were on the displays, that was the one that really got me, is the visual was so
yeah,
different, to what it is now, and, the comment about the carpet was hilarious. I cackled.
that was good. That was really good. But I just absolutely loved it. And I mean, I'm not TNG is not my series, and I still loved it. And I just thought this is too great.
Oh, it was very, very good. So the gang is back together. The son of Picard and Crusher is on his way to the Borg, and the entire fleet has been taken over by children who are now aiming at Earth's only defense system. That's where we leave episode 9.
That's a great way for us to end it, and I hope our listeners will join us, Megan, for our next episode, which unfortunately is our final
I'm
episode.
so sad the series is over.
Yeah. So I'm Tom Fox.
And I'm Megan Dougherty. See you next time.
This is Tom Fox. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you'll join us for our next episode, which is the final episode of Picard Season 3, Episode 10. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to great podcasts, because That's What Heroes Do is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.